Hello and welcome to episode 67 of the Foundry Roundtable, the podcast exclusively covering the Foundry for Star Trek Online. I'm your tame Foundry author, Drogan1701. With me is star of a new VH1 reality show, Starship Captaining Naked, Greendragoon. How are the ratings so far? And we have a rejected candidate for the new Captain America, Hippiejohn.
It just didn't work out. I don't have the physique.
And joining us today as our guest is Elijah, producer and host of Priority One. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you for having me, guys. I'm excited to be here.
Well, we're excited to have you. We brought Elijah on because of the recent Foundry discussion they had over at Priority One, but we will get into that in a little bit because we have just an absolute ton of news. 9.5 has launched. You can actually see on our stream much of what is in 9.5. We have Xindi stuff, we have Odyssey uniforms, all kinds of different things. And if I may say that it's not on the poll, but I would love to have this Xindi bridge and some of the pieces from it in the Foundry. Kind of goes without saying, though, anytime something new is added.
Yeah.
So we have numerous Foundry editions. This includes the Odyssey uniforms with all the variants, such as long coats, dress uniforms, tactical uniforms. All of it is now in the Foundry. Also included is the Bortasco uniforms and all those variants, Starfleet Academy and Klingon Academy, and some of the TOS dress uniforms. What we hear is that some of this was Thomas the Cat and some of it was Zeronius Rex who added these things.
Mm-hmm. Well, we got medical uniforms too, didn't we? The short sleeve version?
Yeah, TOS medical uniforms, which are great. I'm a big fan of those. We also have numerous new ships, too many to list. Many of them are the 2409, 2410 skins for the various Fed ships. But very importantly, some of these are actually bug fixes. Because as we know, a lot of the ships that have been added since Legacy of Romulus and, around Season 8, that sort of area, were bugged. They just showed up as black with the blinking lights. But a lot of these have proper textures and models now. So things like the Scimitar and the Andorian ships, now they are actually useful.
Sorry, there are several ships that were not on triple testing that were added in at the last minute.
Very much so. So I think it was said that that was Jams who was putting those in, so thank you to everybody who was doing these Foundry editions. And finally, we have the star clusters, which we can now use as doors, as promised.
Did anyone test to see whether or not the doors available to Klingons was ever expanded?
I have not tested that. We'll see if anybody in the chat room has.
No, we were kind of pushing to get the more than just the ones in Klingon space added for Klingons.
Yeah, they were pretty limited. So, unfortunately, there have been a number of bugs that have come with this update. The major one being is there a significant amount of lag in the editor. We're still trying to pin down exactly what the reason is for this. It might be linked to either how much stuff is in a mission or it may only be affecting existing missions because we've had some people when they open up new missions, they have not experienced this lag. But contrary to initial reports, it does appear to be consistent. Everybody is getting it on their existing missions, so that may make it easier to track down what the problem is.
Yeah. No, I heard something that the people who had created new missions were not seeing it.
Yeah,
this is true.
I don't know whether it's just because a new mission has less stuff in it, or if it's something weird is creeping.
I think it's something weird has creeped in because my first Mayhem mission does not have very much stuff in it, and it's laggy as heck if I try to edit it. But my new mission, no problems.
And this is a mission you just started before or after 9.5 dropped?
Just after it dropped.
Just after. So if you create a brand new mission, you don't get it, but if you open up an existing mission, you do.
That's what it seems to be.
Okay. Well, at least that will help Cryptocross get it fixed. Although there's no way to know about what kind of ETA we can expect to fix
Yeah.
on. So
I mean, they've got
hopefully
to check
they'll
numbers.
get on it come Monday.
Smirk made a comment in the live stream that it was a known issue and that they were working on it.
Good. There's another known issue affecting at least one of the exploration doors, where if somebody else is interacting with that door, say like to do the DOF missions, it actually blocks anyone else from using that door. I believe that one they do have a fix incoming for. So I don't know. Anybody know of any other bugs? with Foundry at
Do
the moment?
we know, has anyone tested what became of missions that use memory alpha?
I have not. Of course, I did not have one. So,
Right,
I
I have no way to test it.
yeah, I haven't heard from anyone who does.
I pulled one up that what looked like a memory alpha mission. It wasn't one I was familiar with, though. And nothing came up when I went to memory alpha, so I'm unsure if, for now, unless you reset the location, whether your door is just inaccessible.
Well, which mission is it? The Infinitesimal Frontier, right? That heavily used memory alpha. I mean, and just having things on the social map as well is just starting.
Here's interesting. That was a spotlighted mission, and it is no longer in the spotlight list.
Oh,
Do
really?
you think Smirk proactively pulled it?
I don't know.
That may have been a good decision. I
'Cause it was the
don't
only
know.
one. It was the only
What's the
spotlight that-
author's name on that one? Does anyone remember?
Seeing if I can find it right
'Cause
now.
I don't honestly remember if that author is still around. As sometimes happens. I mean, we got missions up from people who've long since left the community.
True.
Dixonium. Dixonium.
I have seen him post recently. So let's see. Any more news, Dragoon?
I think that's most of it. Actually, there was one small thing that's kind of cropped up, and this actually comes from you, Elijah, and Priority One during your live stream where you were raising funds for Star Trek Las Vegas. And apparently, Captain Geko once again brought up the idea of a Foundry Reputation system, but apparently this one, at least the idea was tied to the exploration zones and using the Foundry to kind of fill in the exploration zones, which apparently, I mean, has brought up some interesting discussions on the forums.
Yeah, Kirkfat especially has been tangling with some people over that.
So talking about the forums, there's there's an interesting thing that I see happening that happened yesterday when people were telling me that Taco Fangs had gotten a specific idea about something that we were talking about that came from a different source, than most people that had been talking about stuff. And it's one thing that I find interesting is that when anyone from the Foundry community says anything, like if it's Kirkfat posting something in the forums, or if it's a different podcast saying something on their podcast, there's this almost we're all included in it somehow, as if like everyone in the Foundry community is represented by one person saying things, and it's a weird and troubling thing that I'm seeing happening. So,
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, I'm not going to pretend that the community is any sort of cohesive unit. I mean, we've talked about in the past the difficulties of trying to even get cohesion in amongst just the Foundry authors. But yeah, I mean, it kind of is easy to just kind of lump everyone in together, or to assume that if someone is talking about the Foundry, that they are part of the Foundry community.
Yeah, I mean the thing that brings us together is a shared interest. But I mean, like any group of people that share an interest, we all think very different ways about it and about other things. So I mean, it's not I don't know, there's no one person who's the spokesperson for the community. In fact, somebody was trying to call me that on the forums the other day, and I was thinking, because of these polls that I've been doing, and I've been thinking to myself, I don't want to be the spokesperson of the community. I'm just trying to help out.
But now, do you think that, and this is Elijah here from Party One, do you guys think that by doing something like the Foundry Roundtable, by having websites like Starbase UGC, it helps almost give a voice to Foundry authors?
I think it does kind of act as a point of collection, as far as getting a number of people together to kind of unify in a sort of way. But even then, the people who interact through Starbase UGC or this podcast are actually an incredible minority. I mean, at best, I can think maybe a couple dozen people who are kind of interact on Starbase UGC, and even that. I mean, if you can take the forums even as a whole, because I mean, we know for a fact that only a tiny fraction of the community actually goes to the forums.
Right.
So I never like to say that.
And it's only the angry ones.
Yes.
By March.
But I never like to say that I speak for anyone but myself.
Yeah. But I would say that I think you're hitting on something in that people do see any kind of, centralized location as a place to put their opinions and information. And yeah, I think you're right in that it does bring people together. I just don't think it brings people together on as wide a scale as some people think that it does.
And like, for instance, and the reason I asked that is that, let's say I wanted to dabble in trying to author a Foundry mission, which I probably just simply don't have the talent for. I'm going to want my mission to be reviewed by you guys. I'm going to want my mission to get some attention on Starbase UGC, because in my eyes, you guys are the leaders of the Foundry. And I know, and like I hear you saying, I don't know that I want that responsibility. But maybe that's what the community needs. Maybe it needs, a group, which you guys do, to step up to the plate and represent the Foundry in the best light possible. A system that is arguably, not arguably, is underdeveloped, and is still pretty much in beta, right? So to
That's
speak.
what they always say. Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
You're absolutely
It's still
right.
labeled
I mean,
as beta.
and while I say we don't speak for the Foundry, we are representative of it. And honestly, I mean, part of the core reasons that Starbase UGC exists is to teach new authors and to help them get into the Foundry. A lot of the resources are devoted around either promoting the Foundry in some way, either through a project or something like that, or coming out with tutorials and whatnot. And I mean, if you go over to the tutorial section over there, it's massive and it's all community authored.
And really, I mean, that was probably the sort of base intent that I had when I started talking to people about doing this podcast is, essentially provide a voice for Foundry authors and a way to just talk about and promote the Foundry. And, if that leads to sort of being a collecting point of people's opinions, and maybe we can, help focus that and get that feedback back to Cryptic, because we know some of them at least do watch the show occasionally, then hopefully it's fulfilled its purpose.
Yeah, but I mean, at the same time, we kind of got to play a very cautious line, because I mean, not too long ago, we kind of floated the idea of trying to form a player council for Foundry, and that was met with very mixed results. A lot of people liked the idea. Some people did not like the idea.
Yeah.
And I think there's just a general fear that if a particular group of players gains too much power, that it'll cut off other people from getting feedback in.
Which was never our intent, for sure. But it did lead to actually something better, which I should mention. We've been doing these polls lately to provide a recommendation to Cryptic. They say, if your art guys have some time and they want to add some Foundry assets or some Foundry maps or some Foundry costumes, this is what the community would like you to focus on. So I put up, the first one was costume poll, which is done and submitted. In fact, a lot of these new costumes that were put in happen to be on it. The timing makes me think that was a complete coincidence. So
No.
they have the results of that one, and now the map poll is still open to see what maps the community wants most of all. It's open. I'm going to leave it open till Monday, and then we're going to get the results of that. I think currently the new Romulus maps are winning by quite a big margin. So people really want the new Romulus ground map and space map and the new Romulus command.
Not surprised.
Yeah, I think I should say, the costume poll for more or less kind of went the way I thought it would. I mean, just based on general needs of the Foundry. But I mean, the map poll is kind of while the big items are kind of expected ones, I'm finding that kind of interesting that once you get past the first couple big ones, it then like divides out very widely.
Yeah. Well, and Taco did ask for top 20, so there's going to be a good selection of maps on there, I think.
Yeah. But no, it's
including things like Starfleet Academy, and one it was funny that nobody thought of until the poll was open, and I decided not to add anything to it while it was going, just in fairness. But it was funny, nobody suggested the First City, because the First City maps that we have are the old ones from launch.
True. That is kind of surprising.
But it was the first thing mentioned when the poll actually went up, and we were like, "Oh, we can't believe we forgot that."
Yeah, I suppose on the plus side, it's good that the social zone does have a decent amount of doors to it.
Definitely. So, if you haven't voted in that, go ahead and vote. I think it's been a great way to sort of focus the request storm that the community usually has into, the single bolt of lightning that might get through.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things that let Foundry authors loose, and we will come up with a mountain of requests.
Which still happens. So Taco was on Twitter, I think it was either yesterday or the day before, and he mentioned that in the next build he's going to be adding a horizontal invisible object, an invisible wall. It'll be solid, you can walk on. And so immediately after, some of my best friends in the Foundry community deluged him with requests for more stuff.
Yeah. I did feel bad for him.
I had to call him out on it.
I'm glad that you did, because it really, to me, that's one of those, when we have one of the devs who says, "Hey, I have enough time to do this thing. I hope you guys enjoy it," to then turn around and be like, "Give us more." It's kind of rude. Like, we already know that they get very little time to assist us with tagging new assets. And then when they do get the chance to do it, to turn around and be like, "Well, we want this too." It seems rude to me. I don't know.
Yeah.
And Taco's got that list of assets that we did many, many months ago. And he's working through it because that one that was on there.
Yeah. So I mean, at the same time, I think it's
got
good.
The community priorities.
And I mean, for people listening who do have things that they want to try and see get into the Foundry, I have no doubt. I mean, it definitely seems like these polls are proving to be a positive thing. So, I mean, if something goes well, I mean, for all intents and purposes, there will probably be another poll later.
Yeah. If get the things get checked off, we'll do another one. And we should probably do another assets only poll, because now that we've done the specialized one for maps and for costumes, we need one for just objects. Like, say, the cool consoles on this map or something.
I personally kind of want to give Taco a little breathing room. It's going to take him some time to
sure.
even finish up the original asset poll as well as the map poll, because we know maps take time.
Mm-hmm.
A lot more time than objects. So before we get to anything else, I wanted to... the reason we asked Elijah to come on the show today and I think I actually alluded to this before, was they had a very interesting conversation and some ideas about the Foundry on an episode of Priority One just recently, and we would like to talk about that. So, Elijah, if you could maybe just give us a summary of what you talked about there.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, thank you for having me on the show. I'm honored to be here and be able to discuss Foundry when I am in no way a Foundry aficionado. So I will start by saying that. I will start this discussion by saying I am the player that you guys want to get into the Foundry to play. Not specifically you guys, but Cryptic would want to get, into the Foundry to play. With the announcement that the exploration clusters were going to be removed from Star Trek Online with Season 9.5, and the removal of things like Memory Alpha, there was a significant outcry for content, because in theory, in its discussion, the exploration cluster was the only quote-unquote exploration that you can get from Star Trek Online, in the sense that it was automatically generating a new mission with new assets and new characters for players that wanted to satiate that, explore strange new worlds. But, let's face it, that system is archaic, old, and you just can't hold a candle to it, when comparing it to the new missions that Cryptic Studios is popping out with their featured episodes, or even the ingenuity of Foundry authors. So one of the first topic we had, which I believe was in episode 181, if not 182, because we continue the conversation again this week for episode 183, was that, okay, so we have these, and this actually stemmed from this recent issue of Star Trek Magazine. And so when I was reading the article and I was reading Christine's RP story titled Dove from Star Trek Magazine, the summer edition, it got my gears going. All right, so people are upset that the exploration missions are going. And yet there's already a tool in the game that is excellent for exploration, right? There are stories being told in the Foundry that people like me, ignorant people like me, are not diving in feet first, head first, whatever your phrase might be, to explore, right? To get story, to get adventure that fills the gap between featured episodes, and would fill the gap if exploration cluster were to be destroyed. So, one of the things that we thought about, that we were just throwing around on the episode of Priority One, was that, all right, so why not have these, because there's already spotlighted missions, right? For the last several episodes, for the last several issues of Star Trek Magazine, Foundry authors have been spotlighted in that issue, which is no small accolade. That's resume writing. That's resume listing stuff right there. To say that you've been spotlighted in a public, international publication like Star Trek Magazine. These spotlight missions, why not? They've been vetted, right? They've been vetted, quote unquote, by Cryptic Studios. They've been vetted by the community. They've been spotlighted. Why not add that to a list of missions that can be automatically generated listed when you fly up to that door, to the exploration cluster door, which is now just a DOF access, or now can be added through for our Foundry authors, if I'm understanding it correctly. But for me, I really, the way that the Foundry is set up right now in the game is overwhelming. When you guys invited me, I think I asked, okay, what mission should I play? And you guys recommended the Moons of Maynar from, did I get that right? From Bialymac.
The Mayns of Balnar Moon.
That's the one.
Yeah.
And, I would not have gone in, and even though there's a list of, top Foundry missions, it's a long list. And I would probably not, just jump in and just select one of them, right? It's hard for me to do that. But I may fly up to a cluster and say, okay, and it'll say explore cluster. I launch the mission, and it automatically chooses for me one of these spotlighted Foundry missions. I don't have to decide. The system does it for me. And I believe Neverwinter has something like that.
They
if
have
I'm not mistaken.
what are like called harpers or well-informed barmaids, and as I understand it, the way it works is you talk to this person and they will present you with like a list of 3 randomly picked missions. There might be some like internal like system vetting that goes on, but I think it's fairly random.
Mm-hmm.
So something like that, I think, would be great. I mean, get these spotlighted missions in a database on the system. I fly up to that little nebulous cloud that's now in Sirius sector block, and boom, launch a mission. I don't have to open the Foundry. I don't have to open the Foundry UI. I don't have to do anything. I just pick a mission, and the system automatically chooses it for me. And then maybe if anything, maybe these missions you won't be able to add comments. I don't know what the engineering would be behind it, but I think it would not only spotlight the Foundry authors' missions, obviously in another venue, which would be the auto-generated door, but it would satiate that desire for exploration when you fly up to the cluster, which right now there's nothing there. If in order for you to do that, like you guys were explaining to me before the show, in order for something like that to happen, you've got to go out of the game. Do something outside in the community, and as we know, it's only a small fraction of the player base that goes to the forums.
Yeah.
If it's not in the game for some people, it doesn't exist. And that's something that every content creator is going to have to battle against, right? Is okay, how do we get players that are not going to forums, that are not on Twitter, that are not on Facebook? How do we get these players to pay attention to what the content we're providing? And I think that if Cryptic were to install this type of mechanic, this type of doorway automated system, it would do wonders for the Foundry. I think that, you launch the mission, all of a sudden, just like that title for the featured episode comes up, that nice little cool animation. Maybe it'll just do the animation. It'll say the title of the mission by author.
We've been wishing we could do that animation for years.
Yeah. And so even if not, maybe just a pop-up box at the end of the mission or at the start of the mission. You're playing a Foundry mission authored by so and so.
So I think it's a fantastic idea, and it's one that I've thought they should have something like it for years. Go to any system and hit a button and get to a menu with all the Foundry missions that start there. I mean, especially for exploration clusters. But I think the only issue I would have is that I think you would have to create sort of a new library of exploration-specific missions, because I know I have 2 spotlights, and neither of them has anything to do with exploration, and so it just wouldn't quite fit the theme of what you're talking about. So I think we would need, a lot of us are starting to create new missions that are very exploration-focused, specifically to go at these new doors. So I think that's the library of missions you'd want to draw from.
So I would argue that you don't even need to have to limit it to spotlighted missions. The trick of the trick of spotlighted missions is that they're basically, it's Cryptic saying we say these are good missions, and that's why they need to vet it. But I mean, if it's random, they can be much more lenient, and it's not. And I don't think the Neverwinter system limits to spotlights either. Plus, I mean,
we do have an overall issue right now with the spotlights getting played just tons and tons more than any other mission, and so I mean, anything you do to promote the Foundry, I think, should try and combat that issue.
Yeah. Let me ask you guys. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, let me ask you guys this, and this goes into the discussion that we had a little bit earlier today, and we talked about this on Thursday night's recording. The other thing that I had discussed on the show was gap missions between the featured episodes. And currently, we have things like the Foundry Challenge that Smirk leads and the PWE community management team leads. And, usually they give you a random plot and go have at it. Spoiler alert. if you do not subscribe to Star Trek Magazine, Christine's mission in that latest edition, titled Dove, told a story about Captain Sean returning back to the Enterprise in the new Aquarius destroyer, which he had destroyed by doing the Randy Quaid maneuver from Independence Day into the Planet Killer. So she tells this little story. It's not, it doesn't really tie in with any of the main Iconian story arc. It's none of that. It's just Captain Sean, flying back to the Enterprise in the new Aquarius. She gives you a bit of a backstory. Okay, this is what happened, and this is why. And then on his way, he gets to a planet that is sending a distress call, and there's a Klingon warbird. And all of a sudden, they discover an entity off the port bow that is just kind of staring and watching. And it ends up being it's a spin-off of the TOS episode something Dove.
Day of the Dove.
Day of the Dove, yeah. Where it's an entity that feeds off of negative energy. And that's what the story is. That's what that is. Why couldn't that mission be translated into an escort mission that tells the story and it's just filler, right? Because one thing for me is that this summer event, and I said this on the show, the summer event for me, it just wasn't for me. I've logged in. I haven't logged in as much this summer since season 9 hit and Surface Tension. I just haven't logged on very much, and I'm tired of launching Netflix to get my storyline fix for Star Trek. I want to say, you know what, I'm in the mood for some Star Trek. Let me log into the game and let me play a mission. So ultimately what I'm saying is, why don't these Foundry challenges be these filler missions, right? Where it's a Foundry author has to create and put into a mission the story that Christine told. So Christine would get involved into the Foundry challenges. And Christine would then post and say, okay, here's your plot line. Go. And then, and this is what I was saying earlier, it ties into this earlier discussion. You know how we have Foundry moderators, community Foundry moderators? Why aren't there official Foundry moderators to make sure that the missions are not exploitative, and meet a certain criteria so that these missions can then be, officially vetted and announced as, okay, here's gap content for you between the featured episodes. And they don't have to tell the story of the Iconians. They don't have to, a lot of Star Trek plots were just, episodes were just filler episodes between main story arcs. Why not? Why not? Why not an escort mission for Captain Sean? And then, and more importantly, the question, would authors like you be willing to become a Foundry community moderator so that you would play the mission and you guys would say, yep, this is all good. This is clean. It's not going to be an exploit. Go ahead, Cryptic, try to play this or and give it the final, okay.
Well, I mean, we've already get quite a few entries for each challenge that we do. I mean, on average, we've been averaging between 15, 20 entries the last couple of the Foundry challenges. And then currently, I mean, after they get voted on by the community, and then eventually, if they win, they get spotlighted. And Smirk will usually play through whatever the winner is, do a quick double check, make sure there isn't anything offensive or breaking EULA or something like that.
Say we're actually still waiting for them to announce the winner of the last one right now.
Yeah, I get the impression.
I imagine that got delayed because of the 9.5 launch, but
yeah.
Anyway.
So when I first heard your idea, Elijah, my initial response to it is the biggest fear I have of it would be the what if scenario. What if somewhere in the future Christine Thompson decides to write something that, because as a writer, what you're writing changes and it lives on the page. And what if what she had in mind when she said, hey guys, write this mission, what if something she writes in the future contradicts that? But when you said having Christine give an idea for the mission, something like Captain Sean is going back to the Enterprise with the new Aquarius, write a mission about something that happens to him along the way. That kind of thing, I think that could work, actually. it would just be one more step for Smirk, in that he would have to say what is a good, one sentence challenge for these guys to write a mission, and he'd have to get something like that from Christine that would bridge, a story that might bridge the gap or things that are happening.
Yeah.
If she was in on it, that would definitely help negate that.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's no way that they're going to, get on the forums and be like, all right, here's just a secret plot for, for the next featured episode. Go write something between. No. It's going to have to be, these small little missions, like, that sentence, like you described, like you were saying earlier, could
something
be,
that can operate in isolation.
Yeah, something that can operate in isolation, something that is just a filler episode, and something that will get players who, like me, who don't want a surfboard in Risa, into the game to play a mission that links, since is a part of the lore that Star Trek Online is creating, right? Because Foundry authors may not write anything that has anything to do with the lore of Star Trek Online, right? It has nothing to do with the Iconians, or nothing to do with any specific, or has any specific tie-in with the featured episode arc. But man, I'd go. Oh, this week there's this week escort Captain Sean on his way back with a new Aquarius, and make sure he doesn't blow that one up either. Again, so something like that just kind of ties in, but just kind of wets the palate, in between the featured episodes, and it could be once a week. I would prefer it to be something like once a week. And you know what's going to happen with that? Players are going to get in, they're going to play the mission, then they're also going to launch their DOFs, and they're going to go ahead and make sure that they're getting up in the reputation system. And instead of logging in and feeling like it's just a chore, right, to get through and make sure your buffs are running, make sure you got your launch the dailies, and I get to play a mission, play some content that is authored by a community member, but also ties in and has a flavor of the lore that's going on in Star Trek Online. And then I'm also going to spend more time. And it's really a question about getting cheeks and seats. I don't see. It's hard for me to understand what is key. Why not do this, Cryptic? Why not? Why not go ahead and take advantage of something like that? Because players are just going to stay in the game after they play the mission, And it doesn't have to be a long, epic narrative. It could be a 20-minute mission, escort mission of some kind of nature, and that's it.
So I got 2 points I want to make. The first is, Hippiejohn, you had mentioned something last week about a TNG writer's Bible that used to be out, and that authors would use this to submit spec scripts to TNG.
Yep, that was the first 3 seasons.
So what if Christine Thompson put something like that together for Stowe? Because if you're going to promote something to that level, you're going to want to have it to have a certain consistency with the rest of the official content. What if Christine made a Star Trek Online writer's Bible?
That'd be really cool. That like I was saying, the thing that I was talking about was, when I was a teen, I used to write really bad fanfic, and I would write it. Where I got my information on how, the first season of Next Generation, you were getting to know the characters, and what they had in this Bible was a page about Captain Picard, a paragraph about his background, a paragraph about his paragraph about his personality, and a paragraph about what kind of tics that he had, what kind of special things kind of deal. So
yeah, the other thing I wanted to ask you, Elijah, about is what kind of presentation do you see this special mission being presented in? Obviously, we have the spotlights right now, and when a mission gets spotlighted for that week, it gets a little thing on the splash page. But beyond that, how would you ideally have this mission presented to a player?
First and foremost, the same way that the Foundry spotlighted missions are. So we're talking forum posts. We're talking front page of Star Trek Online arc, if anybody still checks that. I would probably also add it into the mission journal. So, for instance, if I hit J in the game and I want to do episodes, let's say it's... yeah, that's a good question, actually, because I'm going in. I mean, would you add it? Like, let's say if I click on the Solane Dyson story arc in the episodes, all right? So a lot of these are featured episodes and story arc missions. Would these be slipped in there? I don't know. Probably not. I would probably say you would need a new tab, aside from Foundry, and it would probably say, or in the Foundry tab. So right now I click Foundry and it says Spotlight Mission, Browse All, Review Content. I would probably say a new tab where it says Spotlight, Browse All. Add a new tab in there, and I don't know what you would name it. Something like story missions or featured lore missions. I don't know, something like that. And you could still add it to the episode tab. It could be something like you click on Solane and there's a little button up on top or at the bottom that says, play, lore Foundry missions, something like that. And then it'll just take you to it'll take you to the exact same screen that's in the Foundry tab that does the same thing. So maybe, actually, so when you go to the episodes and it says Klingon War, Wasteland, Romulan, Cardassian, maybe there's a tab that looks just like that, and in Klingon War, it's all the Foundry missions that kind of tell the story that go in between. The other thing maybe is in that episode tab under Solane, and I'm just kind of throwing ideas around, where let's say Sphere of Influence, then there's a sub tab there in between Sphere of Influence and circle with circles within circles that's kind of indented, and it says Foundry mission lore something. So it's like a subcategory under Sphere of Influence, and that's the way I'm thinking that these challenges should be. So we've got Sphere of Influence, then the next one circle within circles, and the missions the time it takes between those missions can be several weeks or months before Cryptic pops one of these out. So Sphere of Influence, then there's a sub tab, and it's maybe 4 missions indented so you can tell that there's a clear difference, and it's labeled something like Foundry authored lore mission, Foundry authored in between mission, whatever artistic literary term we could think of that would help translate what I'm trying to say, but something like that.
Our community mission such and such.
Yeah, something like that. I think it's a great idea, and I don't know, it reminds me of an idea that I had a long, long time ago, and that D-Stall talked about completely independently of me, is, back when the Klingon Empire only had so much content and you started at level 20, my idea was, take the best KDF Foundry missions, make them official, put the usual, enough XP and things like that to be able to make them viable for leveling, and make that the Klingon leveling experience. Right. It was something that he vaguely talked about at one point as well. So I think taking some of the Foundry missions and making them official in a way that which doesn't replace any content of Cryptics. It doesn't affect any content of Cryptics. It hopefully, there's always this feedback we get from a certain subset of the community that, we're doing Cryptic's job for them. I think the more you can do with the Foundry, the more the game as a whole can do with the Foundry, the better off it is, because there is fantastic content that we're making that is being ignored by people or just not seen.
I mean, it's really not seen. I mean, when I go, it's overwhelming too. I mean, you hit J, you click on Foundry, and I don't even know where to begin, man.
That's something I was going to ask you, was when you mentioned before that opening up the Foundry search and the Foundry UI that there is in the game, you mentioned overwhelming, and do you think that a reorganizing of the way that the UI for people to see the Foundry is what's really needed?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, I'm personally of the opinion that the entire mission journal is overdue for an overhaul.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, yeah, absolutely. I mean, with respect to the Foundry, one recurring theme that I've heard from several of the podcasts and content creators that cover Foundry is its filtering, is its sorting, the categories that can be done. I think that if there was a way for me to, filter for shoot 'em up missions, then great. But you have the issue of exploitative missions that go against the EULA, and you can get in trouble for doing. But if we're talking about missions that fill in the gap between the episodes, like something like an escort them, maybe it would be under that episodes tab, and you click on the episodes, and then there's a space between, like if we were back to Solanae. And it would just be indented. It would be clear that it's not a Cryptic created mission. It would say, Foundry authored, supplemental mission.
Ooh, I like that. Supplemental mission.
Supplemental mission.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So there's a couple of things I think that could combat that sense of being overwhelmed the first time you look in the Foundry tab. The first is we need a nice tutorial to get people, to ease people into playing Foundry missions. Say, this is what they are. This is how you get to them. This is how you look for them. Just a tutorial mission given by an NPC in the game. When you turn 10 or whenever it is you get to access the Foundry first. This is something we've talked about before, but a nice tutorial that leads people by the hand into the Foundry, and gets them familiar with it. That way it's not so overwhelming when you can look at what the choices are. And then, as you said, a complete redo of the search interface, which, I think one of the things that is a fairly general consensus among the Foundry community, as much as rare as those things are, is, a way to filter missions before you actually get to the list. So, the first thing when you click on the Foundry tab, pops up this thing says, what mission would you like to play today? And it, so you click on a window that says combat, and it takes you to combat missions. A window that says story, it takes you to story-heavy missions. Something that filters it before you even see a list of missions.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of things that could be done with the UI just to kind of make finding Foundry missions an easier experience.
Yeah.
Not to mention, I still am a fan of the idea of Foundry missions.
So Horient in the chat room brings up a very good point, is that if Cryptic is going to make any of our user-based missions, quote, official in any way, it could require them to get approval from CBS. I don't know how that would work, but it is a possibility.
I don't know how deep. I think they have to make get broad approval for things. I don't know that they get approval on a point by point, and especially if in this hypothetical scenario we're talking about missions that are following an outline set by Christine, that may be enough to where they just have to either approve the outline, and then it's the Foundry author's job to follow that outline.
I mean,
I would say it's also why the EULA exists.
Right. I mean, in theory, right, and this is something I brought up in last week's episode, was that the moment you create and publish a Foundry, I believe the EULA says that's it, it's ours. We can do whatever we want with it.
Yeah,
now, we pointed out that Star Trek Online, Cryptic has never, in my understanding, taken an idea and ported it into a featured episode and stolen it and claimed it to be their own.
Not that they've told us.
Right, yeah, not that they've told us, and it would be
not that anyone has brought up anyway.
Right. It would be a PR nightmare. I mean, that's not something that they're going to be willing to do. So, in theory, according to the EULA, that's it. It becomes their property. But I think when it comes to the whole CBS and Spotlight, what can be saying, what can be given its blessing, Star Trek Online is considered soft canon. So I think as long as these missions that we're talking about that fill the gap between featured episodes don't involve a Captain Picard or a Data or whatever, it's going to be given the same treatment that a spotlight mission is going to be given. And quite possibly the addition of being included in the mission journal for the episodic missions in a category of sorts.
And I think if it's still always presented as, this is user-made content, I think you'd probably be okay.
Right.
But I mean,
because it's not like CBS polices our Foundry missions at the moment.
Right. Exactly.
But I mean,
just like a book. I mean, you think of author writing a book about Star Trek. Sometimes you hear about it, sometimes you don't. And nobody really stops them because it's an independent author writing for Star Trek.
Yeah, but I mean, at the same time, I mean, as you said, Hippiejohn, I mean, at one time, I mean, even the TV shows were taking submissions from outside people for episodes. So I mean, is this really any different?
I don't think it is. No.
No, I don't think it is either. Not
really. What Horient is saying is that it might be viewed as different if it's in that official mission journal, in that tab.
That's true. I definitely think there's going to be a much higher
official time. Yeah.
I think there's going to be a much higher level of scrutiny from Cryptic. You better believe, like, somebody higher than Smirk is going to be approving it if this idea ever became a reality.
Possibly.
But at the same time, I mean, I don't think it's doesn't have potential. Obviously, it would require a lot of new tech that isn't currently in place. But again,
and not only that, but I mean, if there are if there are forum moderators, if there are community members who are entrusted with forum powers to edit, delete, and remove forum posts, then I think that there are members of the Foundry community, like yourselves, that may take up that responsibility and say, okay, I'm going to play this, and you will be the first line. You become the first line of defense. I'm going to play these missions that have been submitted in this specific Foundry challenge to fill, the supplemental missions. I'm going to play these first, and I'm going to make sure that they meet certain criteria, part of that Bible maybe that you guys were talking about earlier, and then I'm going to give it my thumbs up. And if let's say it's 5 of you, if 3 out of 5 of you give it the thumbs up, then it moves on to be played by by whoever Cryptic has to play, has to run through the missions, and then they play it, or a team of them there play it, and that's it. Boom, it's done. And it's approved. So, that's it. You guys could be the first line of defense, as you are now, and except you'd be given an official community moderator title like one would from the forums, unless you guys already have it on being a dumb, ignorant fool.
No, definitely not.
One like that.
And yeah. But,
I mean, that may have been what the, become a reviewer thing on the Foundry really was maybe intended to be in some way, where the people who can play missions that are below 5 reviews, maybe that was what that was sort of intended to be. It was a little bit of a vetting process. I don't think it actually has worked in that regard.
No.
And I mean, and it is entirely possible to report a Foundry mission.
Oh yeah,
as it is right now.
Yeah, anyone can.
I will say, I actually don't even think you need to really set up too much more than they already have for Foundry challenges, because I mean, they already have a reasonable vetting system through community votes and then through Smirk's approval. I think only you would have to involve someone like Christine Thompson, maybe a one of the game designers, to do a final check of it to make sure that there isn't anything that's going to really stand out strangely if you put this mission in and amongst more official missions.
I think it'd be tough to do that on a weekly basis, but I think it could be done.
Yeah, I don't think you can pull it off.
I think weekly would be maybe a bit too quick.
I don't think it could.
Well, I mean, yeah, if our Foundry authors are writing 2-hour-long missions, no, probably not, and that might be a criteria too. These missions are going to be designed for players like Elijah that want to go in, do the mission, get some story, feel like I'm a part of the lore and the world, and then get out and do other things.
And there's already
even half-hour missions can take us many man hours to
Okay.
do.
Yeah, it really
It's a
depends on how
long
much you put
process.
into
Or I
it.
should say, it can be a long process. I mean, I built a mission in 24 hours one time, but I can't say it's my best.
Yeah, I think
So,
we built one live in 5 hours.
This is true. We actually did live stream way back in December. Live streamed a Foundry mission over 2 episodes, a total of about 5 hours to finish it.
Wow.
But it was pretty basic. So I think at this point, because Hippie indicated earlier that he's going to have to leave early, I think we will move it along to mission reviews.
Well, I know Elijah has to leave before I do, so why don't we get... we convinced him to play a Foundry mission. Why don't we get his his opinions?
So, yeah, all right. So I played the Foundry mission you recommended to me by Ali Mac. It's a
Mayns of Balnar Moon.
Balnar Moon.
There we go. Yes. The Mayns of Balnar Moon. And you know, one of the all right, so I don't have any criteria of reviews, so I'm just gonna have to wing this. So, but here's what here I go. One of the issues that I find is difficult, and I don't know how many of you guys know I have a Bachelor of Arts in theater. So one of the things that I think is most difficult for an author, a playwright, a screenwriter, is to make sure that every character has their own unique voice when reading it or when writing it. So I have found in past that Foundry authors may have a difficult time with that. I remember I'm going to shout out Tony here. I remember Tony's mission Overture, who he loves plugging it. So if Tony's listening live, take a drink. His Overture series. I remember playing the mission, and every character. I heard Tony. It was just Tony reading. It was girl Tony. It was Andorian Tony. It was and it was Tony. So and I told him this, and I shared this with him, and so he knows. So that's one thing. There's also a fine line, a delicate balance that Foundry authors have to balance or walk on when it comes to messing around with the voice of a player's boff and captain. I find that the the featured episodes when Christine or whoever is writing the mission, I think they almost try to avoid using your own boffs, but when they do, it's a very sterile, professional dialogue. Right? Very few contractions, very few. It's, I'm talking to my boss, and I'm going to talk to them with respect and professionalism. And it doesn't matter if it's my Vulcan or my Borg. There's that voice that's given to the boss. So when coming to the review of the Mines of Balnar Moon, unfortunately I wasn't able to finish the mission because it ended up bugging out at me towards the end. But it's a story mission, so there's ground combat. It's pretty much set on the ground as far as I played. I enjoyed the use of the environments. I think he used the assets available very well. The maps felt detailed. I enjoyed them. They were fun to walk around. It was nice being in the hangar bay and looking out into space. And so that was fun. The story was interesting. I had a little bit, and again, I feel bad, guys, because I've never done this before, so I feel like I'm being a complete ass. Great. So I don't want to sound like an ass. I really don't. So anyway, or at least I don't, and I also don't want to insult Ali Mac, and I don't want him to be like, well, this guy's an idiot. He doesn't know anything he's talking about. I feel terrible. But so one of the things, again, in the writing of it, we land on the moon, and the first thing I'm told is we need to get out of this environment quick because we're going to freeze our asses off. And the wind is so loud that we have to scream over the wind. We have to yell at each other. It's like in a crowded rave bar. So, as we're walking, as my team and I, right, because I'm putting myself in the captain's shoes and I'm role-playing in this, trying to get immersed into the story, we're walking around and my bridge officer is trying to make witty repartee about the spider eggs, whether or not they're going to be frozen or not. Shut up! I want to get inside. I'm freezing my ass off. not to mention, we have to scream at the top of our lungs just to be heard. I don't care about. Shut up. Where do I have to go? So, also there was the one line about the weapon that was needed that is so old that we don't carry on the bridge, and so my liberated Borg, refers to this weapon as old style. I'm like, my Borg is not going to call something like an old-timey weapon, So that's where that I was talking about earlier, that fine line, that delicate balance of taking liberties with the boss's voice, the captain's voice. Because my liberated Borg is probably not going to say that old-timey weapon that we don't carry or old style. No, she's probably going to say something like, this an outdated or
antiquated.
Outdated weapon that we no longer carry on the ship, that's only used here. So it's hard. It's that's why I don't touch the Foundry, man. I would not be able to be an author because not only am I going to be my own worst critic, but it's tough, man. It's tough to write a voice, a character voice, and then beyond that, it's harder to give a voice to a player who already in their mind has a voice for these characters, these tunes, which is why I think when we do, like I said earlier, when you do a Foundry or a featured episode mission, it's sterile, it's very professional. Like I'm talking to a cop, I'm talking to a cop, and I'm like, yes sir, yes officer, yes sir, no sir. I'm not gonna talk to them like I'm gonna be buddy with. It's not gonna be a Harry Kim and shit, what's his name? I'm sorry, I don't mean to curse.
Tom Paris.
Tom Paris. It's not going to be. It's not going to be a Harry Kim Tom Paris discussion or a dialogue or repartee when I'm talking to my captain. It's going to be Harry Kim to Janeway on the bridge. Captain, I'm sorry, Captain. No, I didn't mean to do that, Captain. It's a delicate line when writing something like that. And again, listen, this is why I feel so bad because I don't play Foundry missions enough, and here I am, telling Ali Mac, you need, the writing. So,
well, so you're actually on track though, because this is something that we've talked about on the show several times at least, and one of the things that we sort of settled on is to actually do that. Exactly what you're recommending is, keep the bridge officer and captain dialogue fairly professional, or for the captains at least, provide some different options of personalities, and then when you bring in original characters, make them the big personalities.
Yes. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So you're on track.
Yeah,
So,
I don't think I think you're talking about some of the things we often talk about. So
No, in fact, you not being a Foundry author, actually, I almost kind of want to say makes your opinion a little more legitimate because, as authors, we can kind of get stuck or be too close to the tool and the content. So we're kind of we get used to the misnomers, whereas someone. Really, our target audience isn't the Foundry authors. It's the general player base. So
yeah, it's you.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
you.
How can your opinion about it not be valid then?
Right. I appreciate that. Thank you. But it was, overall it was an interesting mission, and I enjoyed playing with that. I am a fan of explosions, and I get accused by my colleagues that I just like to explode things, and yeah, that might be true, but I also enjoy the story. I think the featured episodes, for instance, that Cryptic write have a great balance of that kind of stuff, where and I don't think it takes I'm sure it helps that you sprinkle that with a voice like Michael Dorn or Tim Russ, but before that, when there weren't voices, the stories were still great. We look back at the Romulan arc when you're on the planet battling the Jesus, what's the name of that mission? I suck at this mission naming. Remember when you're taken prisoner and then you have to fight in the big arena. Arena. Yeah, Coliseum or Arena. Yeah, one of them. So that was before the voiceover stuff, and that was a great storyline. It continued what we know of a 2409 timeline. I lost my trail of thought. What was I saying with that? Oh, balance. Yeah. So, I like story. I like balance. But my Borg, I don't want... Shut up. I'm freezing. I don't want to talk about whether or not these spider eggs are going to be good at the end of the winter. I want to get inside already. So, it's a fine balance. I've tried to even read, the books and the novels, and I try to get into it. And I'm not a reader. I really am just not a reader. And two, it just doesn't grab me. I have, I am your target audience. Is trying to get me into playing the Foundry, and I think that for me, a person like me, replacing the exploration with a pop-up that says, play a mission, and boom, it auto-generates something, or I get an option. Do you want exploration? Do you want battle? Do you want, I don't know, something? That would be good. And then on the other aspect is the Foundry Spotlight challenges should focus more on filling the gap between episodes with side stories, like escorting Sean in the new Aquarius that he hopefully won't scratch on the way back to the Enterprise.
No, you did fine.
Yeah, good. No, I mean, overall, if I were to give it, 1 to 5 stars, I'd say, I don't know, man, because this mission has been like highly rated for like the last 2.5 years. I would say that I'd probably give it 3.5, maybe 4 stars.
Okay.
When something that I picked up on way back when I was in like grade school or something is to not be afraid to like something that people say is a great work or a classic or anything like that, because it's still not going to appeal to everybody, even if it's been so highly rated by thousands of people, or hundreds, probably more like. For purposes.
Yeah.
Very, very few missions have more than 1,000 real plays, so.
Mm-hmm.
Now I kind of want to go on a quest to go find the perfect Foundry mission for Elijah.
Well, somebody recommended the Purity series. Why would I?
It's the Realm Time in the chat room said it would probably drive you crazy because 6 different people, a different author for each part of the series. So.
Maybe
that was our big group project from last year.
I remember that. Yeah.
Oh, great
Now,
collaboration.
why would you? Let me ask you this real quick before I have to go. Why would you guys do when it comes to collaboration? Why do one mission each? Or I don't know if this is how you did it. If I'm understanding correctly, like let's say for instance, it's 3 of you write one mission, and all right, you'll do the captain, ensign so and so, and lieutenant so and so, and give them their voice, and I'll do so and so and so and so and so and so.
Well, it was kind of an experiment, and I don't think we would do it exactly the same way if we went back and did it again. And that was part of the difficulty of it, is that if you're an author on part 3 and you've got some characters from part 1, you had to look at part 1 and see, okay, how were these written then, and kind of had to write them yourselves while still making sure they fit into your story.
Yep.
Yeah, that's got to be tough.
Because there's no actual tools for collaboration in the Foundry, something which we would love to have.
Yeah. So
this is the first project of any kind, and we had to wing it.
Mm-hmm. Listening to you, Elijah, talk about what struck you about playing a Foundry mission, I realized that when authors review a Foundry mission, we're looking at something that the common player is never even going to look at, and that is, like, when you were playing through Mayns of Balnar Moon, it probably wouldn't even occur to you that in order for the water you were running through at that point, in order for it to be continually getting deeper and deeper, he had Ali Mac would make an explosion happen to distract you, and then every single piece of that map, every single thing that he had put there, he triggered it to, when the explosion would go off, he triggered it to sink down a little bit so that the water would be getting deeper. And he hid that from the player by making an explosion happen at that moment. Like, so when we're reviewing that, we look at things like, wow, how did he do that? And I realized just now, listening to you, that like you're the common player who's never used the tool at all, who's never gone into the Foundry, isn't going to realize those sort of things. So that was really interesting for me to come. Yeah.
Yeah, I have no idea how you guys create these missions. I have absolutely no idea.
Well, funnily enough, he would not have to do that today, because just like a month or so ago, we got new water assets put into the Foundry, something we'd never had before. We used to have to use water on existing maps, and we were very hamstrung by that. But now we have actual water assets that he could have, raised up as the map went on,
Oh,
Right.
nice. Okay.
instead of lowering the map into the water.
Cool. Well, guys, listen, I so very much appreciate you inviting me onto the show and to talk about the Foundry from an absolute novice and ignorant person's point of view of the Foundry. I so greatly appreciate what you guys do. Priority One definitely is by no means a Foundry podcast because I don't play the Foundry. But
No, but
hopefully
you-
I will. Hopefully I
You have
I
been
will
doing
do
it. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, but you guys have actually given a good shout out to the Foundry lately, and I want to thank you guys for doing
we're
that.
trying.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, our pleasure. And I'm
the
hoping
more we
that
can get it out there, the better.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I think that the Foundry is an untapped resource of content. That when push comes to shove, it's about money, right? It's about how much more money can we get? No, not we, but how much money can Cryptic earn to make sure that the game continues, right? Because if there isn't any financial benefit to a feature of the game, then they're not going to invest its time. And here we have a tool that players are clamoring to see developed so that they can tell their stories, and get recognition for those authored stories, that I think could be used to make sure that there are cheeks and seats, and those spotlighted missions. Foundry authors can maybe. I mentioned this too before I go. Is that I think not only should they be spotlighted and given public recognition for their hard work, but throw them some zen. Throw the author some zen for writing these missions, especially if it's going to be something that fills the gap between the featured episodes. Throw some zen in there, and as a reward or dilithium or whatever the case may be, to make sure that Foundry authors not only are recognized publicly, but also just that little extra bonus, that little extra icing on the cake, saying, "Yeah, listen, you guys, you've done great work. We're not only are we including you in the mission journal and crediting you, but here's some extra money for your time." I highly doubt that they're going to be burning through their pockets to do something like that, because
1,000 Zen costs them what? Nothing.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. It's an internal thing. So, and because the return on investment, I think if they approach it properly, the return on investment is probably just going to be astounding, right? If I go in and I go into the mission log, the episodic mission log, and all of a sudden there's a new mission under Sphere of Influence, I may actually go back, replay Sphere of Influence, and then continue on to this next mission, so I make sure I don't miss anything that might be, might have been mentioned in Sphere of Influence. It's cheeks and seats, They should hire me. I'm telling you, Cryptic really needs to just hire. I want to get hired. But anyway, gentlemen, thank you so very much for having me. I really appreciate it, and I'm glad that we were able to continue this discussion, and hopefully we can do it again sometime. And again, thank you, everybody. I just want to say on this.
Before you go,
real
real quick, will Priority One be doing anything at Star Trek Las Vegas that you want to?
Yeah. Actually, I was going to just say that. I was going to first and foremost thank the community. Those of you watching, those of you who have participated and shared our Indiegogo campaign. This year, we turned to the audience, we turned to the listener base in the hopes that they would be able to help us fund the cost of covering Star Trek Las Vegas and representing each and every one of you there at the dev panel, after the dev panel, when we're chatting with people like Al Rivera, making sure that your questions get answered, and also that you guys get to try to experience the convention yourselves by following us on Twitter and catching those tweets. Just as we've done in the past at other conventions. So a big thanks to the community. It's been a humbling experience to know that so many people support Priority One. It's just been great. So a big thanks to everybody. In terms of our coverage, we'll definitely be we'll be broadcasting live that Thursday night, which is Thursday the 31st. We'll be broadcasting episode 184, if not 185. From the convention hall Thursday night. Then Saturday we'll be following Cryptic like Tails does Sonic, and making sure that we're tweeting and getting all the news about whatever they were going to release at the panel. After that, hopefully we can go back to the booth like last year, and hopefully they'll follow us back to the booth, and we can continue a Q&A afterwards, which will be hosted by Mav from Stoked Radio and I, and Cookie and Jace will be in the crowd, doing some crowd control and asking people questions, and developers who aren't behind the table. So hopefully that'll happen. We're just kind of assuming it'll happen like it did last year. Things might change. Everything is subject to change. Then we'll also be covering whatever's going on at the iBar event at the Meet the Devs. We'll be covering that. And then, right now the schedule for Star Trek Las Vegas hasn't been announced yet from Creation. So we'll be doing... We'll be, announcing where we're going to be. You can always follow us on Twitter at STO Priority One or Facebook.com/Priority1 Podcast. I always get our Facebook wrong. Let me just double check that. Yeah. It's Facebook.com/Priority1 Podcast. And you can follow us and keep us there. And we hope to see so many of you there. And again, thank you so much to the community. We really appreciate it.
Well, I'm looking forward to meeting you. I will be the Foundry Roundtable correspondent for Star Trek Las Vegas this year, so I will see you there.
Yeah.
Epic. I'm so excited. Are you going in uniform?
No, but we've got some Starbase UGC shirts and some Foundry Roundtable shirts made up, so you look for those.
Cool. Awesome. All right, gentlemen, thank you so very much for having me. I really appreciate it, and I hope we can do it again sometime.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for coming.
Take care, Elisha.
Take care, everybody.
All right, so we still got some time here. So Hippiejohn, let's hear your reviews.
I think you and I both played the same missions, and I know you don't have a big full review of them, Drogan, and neither really do I, because they were both very, very short missions.
You go ahead, and I will add to whatever you say.
Sure. Kirkfat reacted to the removal of the exploration clusters by, and the removal of all of the Genesis-generated content by making a couple of, quote-unquote exploration missions that he called Explore Delta Volanis 1 and Explore Delta Volanis 2, where literally he tells you nothing about the mission, which is what the first thing I want to compliment, which was when you look in the mission journal and you accept it, and even when you're first taking the mission, it really just tells you, hey, go explore. So you really don't know what you're warping into, which is kind of cool. It gives it that feeling of I'm exploring something because, nothing has told me what I'm about to see when I warp in. The only issue that I really found with the missions is that I almost feel like Kirkfat couldn't stop himself. He's a writer, and he likes to come up with interesting characters that he comes up with interesting characters that are part of your crew that, have things going on. You review crew reports and things that a captain might do, and it all feels very, to me it felt very right on for what a captain would do, but it didn't feel right on for an exploration mission, I guess. When I was thinking about exploration missions, for me, what I would do when I went into one of those clusters, they were always very short. Just get in, explore a little bit, get out. And I love that Kirkfat threw more story than we ever saw in any Genesis mission, and the stories actually make a lot of sense. The issue that I have is that maybe he spent too much time with the... I hate to say this because it sounds so terrible, but I think he spent too much time creating the environment for me. Creating a bridge officer who has this specific request that I get on a pad that, maybe later on I deal with that bridge officer, but it doesn't really... What I experienced early in the mission doesn't really come back to me. And it felt like almost missed opportunities. Like dropping a clue for a mystery that didn't exist is one way I would.
I thought from those officer review things, I thought something was going to pop up later, and it didn't, or it didn't. It had very little impact.
Yeah, that's what it was for me. Is it felt. It felt almost extraneous, and it felt like it just was adding a couple of minutes to the runtime of the mission. I love the concept.
Well, and he said that's exactly what it was as well.
Yeah.
Because he was trying to make sure it was over the time to qualify for rewards.
Right. The second one, for example, even has just a spot where you sit in space and, the night crew has taken over, and so you're going to your quarters. And yeah, if I were a captain, when I went to my quarters, sure, I'd sit down and maybe read a book that I was interested in. I'd brush my teeth. I'd have a snack. I'd do all of this. But I literally, in the second one, have like 4 or 5 buttons in a row where I'm just sitting in space, and it's like, have a croissant, or, review this thing, brush your teeth, and eventually go to sleep. Before when you go to sleep, something occurs and the mission continues forward. And there was a lot that felt very extraneous in the missions. I really like the concept. I love what he's doing, and in terms of did I enjoy myself more than any Genesis mission I ever played? Yes, absolutely. They're both of them far better than any Genesis mission that I've ever touched.
Definitely agree.
Yeah, the second one, I think there might be an aspect to these where Kirkfat is creating a continuing story, and he's creating some of these NPCs that are members of your crew, etc., so that he can revisit them in a later exploration mission that you might pick up. But if he's doing that, I suspect and make a little bit of a warning that doing that sort of thing might be shooting yourself in the foot in terms of storytelling, because what you end up with there is eventually you're going to be able to fly up to the Delta Volanis cluster, and that's a door. And if they look through the mission journal and they just type in in the search Delta Volanis, they're going to get a bunch of missions that probably take place in Delta Volanis. What if they pick up Kirkfat's mission number 4 before they pick up mission number 1 that introduces this NPC, and in mission number 4 that NPC becomes important, and you don't have the background to make them feel as present and as real as they need to feel because you never played number 1. That's what I mean when I say I feel like Kirkfat almost couldn't stop himself, because like me, he wants his characters to have life and to really breathe.
Can he do it in such a way where it's recognition through consistency versus actually being a part of the story?
Possibly.
So where these characters may show up, but no particular aspect of what is explored with that character requires previous knowledge.
Right.
So essentially, you don't have to know them already for them to be involved in the story.
So it's kind of like a Sergeant. It's like a Sergeant Siler from SG-1, where Siler shows up all the time.
He was always there, but you didn't have to watch from the beginning to know who he was.
Yeah.
Right. It's like some of these NPCs that are part of Kirkfat's mission, because of the way he has it set up in space, where you first encounter these things, you really have no choice as to, you can't see them as the background in a science lab. They're not just some officer there. The way that it's presented, they kind of really come up as, even if they're not a central point of the story, the dialogue and the boxes that have to do with dealing with them are very heavily a part of the story, whether you want them to be or not. So, overall, I gave both of them 4 stars. I hate the star system, but they are both really nicely done for things that were done very quickly. The second one has a little bit of a bloom problem, a little bit of a little bit of a too much brightness there for me. But once I was
Too
past
many
this,
nebulas on top of each other.
yes, once I was past that space part, it was not an issue. The maps work really nicely. He does a lot of those cool, trigger tricks that we know that Kirkfat knows how to do and does really well, and they're a lot of fun. They certainly are a lot of fun. I love the concept, and I hope that more people make them. That's pretty much my review.
Well, I don't have a whole lot to add, other than I liked both of them as well. I think I didn't quite like the second one as much. I thought it was maybe too abstract, especially the big dream sequence, which went on maybe a bit too long for me. It was not bad in and of itself. It was just, I think, too long. And I don't know, dreams are tough, and it's tough to make them compelling and make it dreamlike enough, but I think he did a good job on it. Mm-hmm. I think what we need is more of these so that we have a good library going for all of the different star clusters, so that we can really prove to people that yes, this is better. Mm-hmm. But I will say one thing about one thing you comment on these sort of mundane tasks is the thing that didn't work for me on those is that I was just sitting on a space map when I was doing them and just clicking buttons. I'd rather be running around a ground map or an interior. I'd be rather running around the interior of my ship doing these things. Mm-hmm.
I'd rather have had to. I know it would have taken him a lot longer to try to build such a thing.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But I would love to have when I get off of my shift on the bridge. I would have loved to make a stop in 10 forward and have a drink, that kind of thing, rather than just press buttons on a space map.
I know Kirkfat has always had a desire and talent for kind of exploring unexplored aspects of Star Trek as an MMO.
Mm-hmm.
So this kind of ties into we'll get to, we got a couple other reviews at least coming up, but this kind of ties into the things that Hippie and me, and actually Relentime I know has been doing this as well, is that we've been building some of these exploration missions just to go in the clusters outside of our big exploration project that we're working on. So I don't know, what sort of lessons are you bringing from these published missions into your one that you're working on?
For me, it's as simple as I'm avoiding the thing that made me... I'm avoiding the daily little junky tasks. I never saw Captain Picard brush his teeth, so I'm not adding a brush your teeth kind of thing. I'm really just going I'm trying to really just push through, this is the exploration, this is where we're going, and in approaching it, I tried not to introduce my fear is people play one mission before they play the one where a character is introduced, and I like your solution to that, so, Dragoon, so I may start doing it with more that I make. But in this case, what I've done is I'm really just using people's BOFs to make a report. You scan something, the science BOF comes up and gives you the report of what you've just found, rather than introducing new characters. I don't feel like I'm making mine 3 maps long, and I don't really feel like a 3 map long quick exploration story has a lot of room for a lot of off development, a lot of stuff on the side. You know what I mean? So my lesson is try to really find the through line and stick to it.
My plan for mine is I went back to some of the TNG episodes that were about exploration and things, and the ones that I liked, and what was prevalent there is that there were usually 2 storylines going on. There was the big overarching plot that usually involves some sort of danger to the ship, or it was the big thing that was going on, and then there was often a B plot, which was something personal about one of the crew members, or several of the crew members. There were always these 2 things intertwined throughout the episode, and usually they related to one another. and interacted with one another. So that's what I'm trying to do, is I'm having this big thing where you investigate the ruins of a dead civilization on a rogue planet that has just been discovered. And you take along, and the B plot is that you take along this linguist with you who just joined your crew. She's very nervous. She doesn't do well on away missions. And you're taking her into this unknown situation. It's going to, things are going to go, sideways, as they often do. And then, by the end of this, she's learned, to have confidence in herself. She saves the day. And, there's this subplot and character development going on while we're exploring. And then, all this takes place over the course of maybe 4 maps. So it's going to have that extra element to it that isn't a mundane thing. It's an actual character arc.
Right.
Seems like one of those things that'd be very difficult to do in the Foundry, just because in TNG, the A plot and B plot usually involve different people.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, which is why I'm making it a new crew member. I'm bringing in a new character. A lot of what you're going to be interacting with is your bridge officers as well, and she's going to be weaving throughout the story, and she's going to have she's going to be along with you on the away mission, and she's going to be back on the ship with you in space, and things like that. So it's going to be a little bit of a challenge to write it and to not overdo it. As I'm also a storyteller. I like writing. I like arcs, and I like through characters, and I'm a DS9 kind of guy. I'm not a TNG kind of writer.
Same.
Oh, looks like we're having a bit of Skype problems.
Did we lose Drogon?
Apparently. I'm back.
Apparently we did. He's back. Well, it is a good time. I'm already 4 minutes over the time that I was supposed to go, so I'm going to say goodbye, everybody, and enjoy space. I'll see you guys out there when I can. Take care, everyone.
All right, take care, Hippie. We'll
catch you later. So we will move along to my review. I reviewed Homage to Galris by Joe_King, who also goes by Chepetico2 in the forums. So, the first thing is that this mission is set prior to 2410, so it's set during the Klingon War. It makes that very clear from the get-go. What you do is you go to assist at a trade conference. Part of your reason for being there is that a Galrisian diplomat, and this is a race that he's created, needs help, and he requires another Galrisian, a Starfleet officer, which you just happen to have on your ship. Kind of a contrived coincidence, but what the heck, we'll go with it. At this point, if I were the author, I would have inserted a dialogue option for me to not know this officer. Something like one of your senior officers says, or you ask one of your senior officers, said, I didn't know we had this person on board, and they give you his background, say he just transferred, something like that. Because in the dialogue, he pretty much assumes that I know this officer, and of course, me not having met this guy, I don't know him. So from there, you go meet with this officer, and there's a scene that's not unlike the bit in Insurrection where Riker and Troy go research the Sona, which I thought was a great thing to throw in there. So what he's done here that was very impressive is that he has done a ton of work on the background of this new species. Pages and pages of stuff. And I have to ask, has anyone ever heard the term fact page before?
I
say
might
anyone,
have.
but only Dragoon is left.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think anyone is me.
I was including the chat room in that. I don't know. It might be a non-American English phrase that I'm just not particularly familiar with. But in case you do run into those occasionally. Why don't you tell us what it is
for those that don't know?
Well, it was pretty easy to figure out what it was in context, because it's essentially just a page with facts on it about this race.
Oh, like a fact sheet.
A fact sheet might be what we generally call it. But he may not be from America. It might be a British expression. It might be a New Zealand expression. Who knows? You do occasionally run into those as a a player because we do have a very international group of authors. So there was one very weird character beat, is that one of my bridge officers was very, very taken with this species, very gushing about how he admired them. My instinct was to say, gosh, get a room. So, this is one of those things where ascribing things to people's bridge officers can go a little overboard. And you might have been able to create a character to do this, or do it in some other way that tells you a bit more about this race, because he was essentially using it as exposition to tell you about the personality traits of this race. Let's see. He had now this is actually his first mission, and he did some custom builds, which is great to see in a author. But I think he made one little mistake, which is all of the walls that he used were the walls with the doors in them, which looks very strange. So there's just a wall entirely of closed doors, including one that would actually lead right into the wall of the transporter room asset. So I think if I were him, I would intersperse them with regular walls, because if you're walking down a hallway, you will see long stretches of wall without any doors in it, and then a door. It looks more natural. So there's almost sort of two parts to this mission. One is you start off with a little bit of a diplomatic essence to it, and then at a certain point it becomes a murder mystery with political consequences. He has a very incredibly well done holodeck transition. He built this starship interior onto a ground map, and as soon as you go through the holodeck door, that all disappears behind you. All that's left is the arch, and then there's this environment all around you. The only problem with it is it goes right to a map transition after that, which kind of negates the purpose of doing that transition and makes it less cool. So I think, from what I remember of the map coming up right after that, where you're inside the holodeck, there didn't seem to be much that couldn't have been done without having that map transition there. So I think you could move that stuff onto that other map. It would take a little bit of work, but I think it would be a better experience for the player. One thing I have to say at this point is that I absolutely love that ground backdrop from the KDF mission Alpha with the giant gas giant in the sky, and anytime I see that backdrop, I just love to look at it. It's brilliant, and I wish there were more like it. And I really need to find a map to use that on. I haven't yet. One of the nice touches that I found about this mission is that you deal a little bit with cross-species prejudices. There's an officer who suspects someone of murder purely because of a misunderstanding of their culture. It's essentially the culture that we're talking about is a polygamous culture. People have multiple partners, and this other officer is coming from a culture where that's not anything that they would ever consider. It's very, very Star Trek thing to throw in there. One thing that is good advice for anybody out there is that the Starbase 39 interior works brilliantly as an interior for the cruise liner, the Horizon cruise liner. He used that in this mission. I know he was very excited when the cruise liner actually got put in the game so he could use it, and it fits very well. There's a mechanic that he uses throughout the mission that I thought was actually a very nice touch. Anytime someone is calling you or you need to call someone, he has an interact object where you tap your comm badge. So, he's tied that little animation to interact objects that pop up. It's a very small thing to throw in, but it's a very Star Trek touch. I liked it a lot. So, bottom line, this is a very well done mission, especially for somebody's first mission. It's a lot better than a lot of first missions that I've played. It has a very Star Trek feel to it. It's got diplomat. I got to be a diplomat. I got to be an investigator. It was excellent. There was a little bit of combat at the end, but it felt like it belonged in the story, and this was a great mission. 4 stars, I'd say. And I highly recommend it to everybody. And I very much hope that the author keeps going with it.
Well, I'm glad he got his cruise liner.
Yes. Ahead of all the other additions to the Foundry as well. That came out actually before 9.5 dropped. So let's see. You didn't have a review, right, Dragoon, or did you?
Nope.
Okay.
I was going to say, I know we kind of did things weird and out of order, but...
yes, very out of order.
I think we were past the hour-and-a-half mark, so...
there's just one more thing I want to touch on is we talked a little bit about what Hippie and I have been working on, but how about you? What have you been working on?
I have been swapping out costumes for Part 1. 9.5 dropped. We got our Odyssey uniforms in the Foundry, and so I've been reskinning all of my custom NPCs that are officers into the new uniform. I got a couple more still left to do. I got to unify the costume design for the Persephone's dead crew. But other than that, I think it's almost ready to get published out and hopefully get resubmitted for spotlighting.
Excellent, excellent. I've actually been doing the same thing.
Yeah, the lag makes it really slow, but at least I'm not trying to do anything like map building.
Well, I've gone through my old missions and figuring out which ones actually had uniforms that needed to be updated, which ones just, used generic NPCs that didn't need touching up. And there were a couple that just had a couple uniforms to do, and then one that I'm not done with yet, Sink the Bismarck, which had all kinds of custom NPCs in Starfleet uniforms, because it's basically just dealing with Starfleet. And have you been using Thomas's guide?
Oh, absolutely. And in fact, I want to a bit of a shout out. He just put out a PDF with all of the designs in it.
Mm-hmm. We'll add a link in our show notes.
Something else I wanted to add, and this is something I kind of figured out manually, is that while we don't see the grid that he references, it'll be like I-20 or I-24 or something like that. I can tell you that the grid still lines up for Foundry, and basically it goes from top to bottom, being A through F, A through
J. Sometimes.
A through J, and then
A through H at least, and then A through J sometimes.
Yeah, it's A through J, and then going from left to right, is 1 to 24.
Yep.
So if you see like a 24, it's over on the right-hand side, and usually you can just count from there to kind of figure it out. H and I are the two lines of gray. So that once I kind of figured that,
those are the ones you use predominantly.
Yeah, but once I figured that out, it got so much easier to find the right colors.
Oh yeah, and we had actually used a similar system when we were designing costumes for Purity, which I might add is something that we at some point would like very much to go back to and put in the new uniforms. Currently, of course, we can't because they're all spotlighted. I don't know. Go ahead.
I was gonna say I definitely like having this standard because in a lot of places, especially these characters, are meant to be player crew members, and I always am nervous about introducing player crew members because on the one hand, the player doesn't know them, so they're going to naturally feel alienated against them. So having the consistent uniforms actually kind of helps that a little. Because then it makes it feel a little bit more like this is just some guy who's been in the background the whole time and you just never noticed, versus someone who you have no idea who this is and how he got on your ship.
Yeah, he's just one of those guys you pass in the hall when you're running around the ship interior. No, and I mean, for me, I love it because I like consistency and I like uniforms that are actually uniform. And plus, I think they look great. So I mean, it's like a double bonus for me. So that's what I've been doing. And I actually even invented a color scheme, because part of one of my missions takes you to Utopia Planitia, and you're talking to guys who design starships there. And I was like, nothing really fits in there, so I created a new one that's kind of based off the medical uniforms that Thomas had. Only, kind of changing them over a little bit, changing a couple parts around a little bit, adding the pockets, because I figure, these guys are going to need places to put, their data pads while they're working and stuff. So I did that, and one of the things I want to do, maybe if I stop being lazy and get around to it, is make a post in the art section for unofficial uniform variants and how to make them. Sir Boulevard already has a really cool one for a Mako dress uniform, which he kind of based off the modern day U.S. Marines dress uniform.
So, well, we do have security uniforms too, though.
Oh, sure.
They're very similar.
But, this is the thing, for Makos at formal functions where they're not going to be wearing their armor. Is what it would be.
Yeah, it's one of those weird things that we kind of try to figure out how the Makos actually exist in this.
Yes, which is unclear. But in any case, that's what we've been doing, and that's probably what we will be doing, because it's very difficult to do a lot of major work at the moment until this lag issue gets fixed, and we hope it will soon.
I suppose I should be glad I'm in the polishing stage of part 2, which I'm going to guess you still haven't taken a look at.
I have not. We'll try and get to that this weekend if I can. But why don't you throw up our contact info?
Okay. If anyone here would like to email us, we can be reached at foundryroundtable@live.com. Submit your requests for reviews, suggestion for discussion topics. Hypothetically, we do listen to it all. Don't be afraid to tell us how we're doing on the show. We always love to hear feedback. You can also reach us on Twitter at Foundry Roundtab. The LE is missing. You can reach Drogan at Drogan1701. You can reach Hippiejohn at Hippie_JOHN. You can reach Mark at Markhawkman. And you can reach me at Greendragoon.
All right. Well, we will say good afternoon.
All right. Take care, everyone.